Hello, welcome to this little video on CMI Assignment 502. This part 4, will be talking through assessment criteria 1.4. So we're still on our first task. This is the last part of that task, the last assessment criteria, where we need to develop approaches to respond to the challenges of managing and leading multiple and remote teams. So I suppose in the modern context, people will be more familiar with this than we might have been in the past, working digitally and that type of thing. You could talk about challenges which you're engaging with now. Another approach to tackling this assessment criteria could be to cast your mind back a few years now to when COVID 2020 lockdowns, all of that, and organizations very quickly had to adapt to people being remote, so working from home and no longer working under the same roof and that sort of thing. So if you wanted to review some of the challenges that you encountered at that point, that would be a really good way to respond to this assignment. So remote teams or multiple teams. So I guess this could be where we have a lot going on over a big geographical area. So it may be that we have people working at distance, potentially over a large geographical area. So even potentially internationally. So and increasingly that's the case now. Actually, we're looking at these things a little bit more globally, supported by technology and that type of thing. It could be that we have people working 100% virtual, so we never actually see them in person. Or it could be that we have a hybrid arrangement where people come into the office once a fortnight, that type of thing. That might be the context as well. Increasingly common now is for teams to be made up of people from different cultures. So again, different cultures, which mean that could relate to different expectations around leadership, and also different time zones. Again, I have supported organizations where people have been in USA and also, say South Korea. And that's a real challenge to make sure everybody has an opportunity to dial in fairly and that type of thing, so that everybody is equally supported and able to come to team meetings and that type of thing when you've got a large difference in time zones. So that's a potentially a challenge to think about. Couple of examples. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise a couple of examples and suggest a way through it. So recommendations as to how we could potentially work through it. So one challenge could be, how do we ensure equality of opportunity for all colleagues when some may be in the office and others are remote? So equality of opportunity, when our natural bias may well be to pay attention to the people who are in the physical room. I think that's definitely something I notice. Also, we might just be more accessible or available to people who are working next to us, in the same office or, on the same desk even, than people who are remote. And if we're leading that team, how do we make sure that our bias doesn't interfere with people's opportunities? That's definitely something to be aware of. So approach one, what we need to think about is making sure that our time and availability is made equally available to remote and in-person colleagues, and that there isn't a skew just because it's more convenient for people to grab you in the corridor or come and chat to you at the desk or over lunch or whatever. It's being mindful of perhaps quite deliberately organizing our time and booking in meetings, catch-ups with people who are digital or working virtually, so that they have an equal opportunity to discuss things with us. So it could be to deliberately schedule online meetings that give everybody equal opportunity to engage. So even though we might be in person in working in the office, sometimes we might actually say that a meeting is going to be virtual, quite deliberately 100% virtual, so that everybody is equally represented. Even when we're doing this hybrid, actually what we can find is that you can kind of get a group of people in the room together and some people dialing in if the technology supports it. But that's okay. But I think nonetheless, there can still be a bit of a bias and a skew to the contributions of the people who are in the physical room. So perhaps from time to time, actually having it 100% digital and nobody, if you like, in the same physical space together might create a little bit more equality, opportunity to contribute. Approach 3, routinely seek feedback on engagement from all colleagues and request suggestions for improvement. I think we're all learning, aren't we, with this? And although some organizations have worked this way for longer than others, it's rarely perfect. So making sure that we do engagement um, surveys, and that we are curious, that we get feedback on how it's going, and how equally represented people feel, and their ability to contribute and collaborate. Checking in on that and seeking recommendations periodically is probably a really good idea. It's almost like looking at this as something that we try to continually improve and evolve into. So there we go, challenge 1 with a few potential approaches. Challenge 2, how do we ensure knowledge and best practice is shared across multiple teams? All right, so the sharing of knowledge and best practice. Approach 1, actually looking at what is that knowledge and best practice. I think coaching conversations are really, really key. And so that could be that as team leaders, that you kind of um, ask people for what they think and what they're doing, that we're curious, and that we kind of, in that kind of coaching space, encourage people to develop their own knowledge base, and to kind of to think about what their best practice might be to things. So I think part 1 of this is that coaching should be woven into the fabric of how we work in an organization, so that people are really encouraged to develop knowledge and best practice for themselves. I think that's one thing to think about. Approach 2, that cross-team collaboration is supported and encouraged. So are there opportunities to break down those silos and maybe develop working groups, that type of thing, where people from different teams, bearing in mind we are looking at kind of challenges of multiple teams here, but is it possible to kind of bring different teams together, or to bring people from different teams together, so that they can work side by side, perhaps on more strategic projects that affect people more broadly? Um, so that we can, again, we can break down or avoid silos from forming that stop the flow of information and ideas across teams. Approach 3, learning events are funded and encouraged. This so the learning events, kind of learning conferences, CPD, that type of thing. There could be training where we bring people together, or a bit more for just a sort of participant-led thing, where people are able to showcase solutions, approaches, innovations that they have been learning about. So possibly even bringing external people to give a perspective on technology and opportunity and that type of thing. So is it possible to kind of put in the diary and then protect real learning events? The funding, can be a bit of a challenge if we're kind of bringing people in. So sometimes there's a cost to that. If we're doing it in the physical space, I think there's an advantage as well. It could be that we do it in a more hybrid way. But again, that kind of brings us back to some of the challenges that I talked about in the last one. Approach 4. Yeah, it could be that we encourage, so as well as having more formal learning events, like training programs and conferences, actually, would it be possible to do kind of like a Friday afternoon chalk and talk thing? So Friday at lunchtime, we get together online for 45 minutes, and we ask each week somebody to share an idea, a tool, a technology, a solution, something cool and interesting that could get other people better at their jobs. So I've seen this done really well, where people introduce a new project management tool that they found online, a new app, or a storytelling technique to help people with their presentations. It could be all sorts of different things, but little 45-minute inputs that are led by people in the organization. Really, really good and culturally beneficial as well, because it gets people collaborating, sharing, and working together on things. So yeah, really like it. Anyway, so there we go. So sharing a best practice for approaches that we could think about in terms of a plan or a strategy to engage with that challenge. So over to you. 2 challenges and 2 solutions. So 2 challenges in terms of leading multiple remote teams, and then working up to approaches to 2 strategies to engaging with those challenges. And as ever, if it's possible to maybe draw a conclusion, give some judgments. What do you think about that? How valuable could it be? to your organization. You know, what's the real purpose of doing this, and kind of coming to a conclusion. That'd be great, again, just in terms of hitting that level 5 standard. So there we go. Hopefully that's been helpful. Again, just to share a couple of examples and some strategies, I guess, for engaging with those challenges. My next video will be moving on to look at the second task and assessment criteria 2.1. So thank you very much.